When you are Roth converting in retirement, just how much do you actually want to convert? It's commonly thought that you don't want to convert all of your IRA assets because in the future you can use small withdrawals to fill up lower brackets like the standard deduction, 10% bracket, and so on. But in today's video, I'm going to talk through 3 scenarios where you actually do want to convert all of your IRA assets. Now, before getting into these scenarios, I like to remind retirees that when we talk about Roth conversions, the math really comes down to the rates that we are paying today versus avoiding in the future. If we pay a lower rate today than we will see in the future, well, abracadabra, you have a tax benefit to your situation. This is due to something called the commutative property of multiplication. Many mistakenly think that paying more taxes up front for a conversion means that you start behind the 8 ball and have to catch up. The proof on the screen shows this is not the case at all. If we pay the same rate today as we would see in the future, we have the same amount of wealth. If we pay a lower rate today, we would have more wealth. And because of this, a common idea persists that many retirees won't want to convert all of their IRA assets because they have the ability to fill up lower brackets like shown on the screen. Think about it this way. You are going to continue to have the standard deduction. If we take out income within the standard deduction, we won't be taxed on that income in any form. We can't convert at better rates than 0%. And so the idea that you want to leave IRA assets to fill up lower brackets is often true, but as with many things in finance, it's not always true. Here are 3 times it's not true. A pretty common case study that breaks this mold is when someone has guaranteed income in the form of a pension or annuity income. Let's say that you're a single filer in 2026 and you have a $40,000 Social Security benefit. On the screen is what your tax graph for the year will look like. Now, this retiree has a $25,000 pension, and we can see that this pension will fill up all of the lower brackets we would otherwise want to fill with small IRA withdrawals. In fact, this retiree will never see a marginal bracket lower than 25% on their withdrawals. And so if this retiree can prudently convert all of their IRA assets at less than 25%, they certainly should. In fact, if this retiree can convert all of their IRA assets at less than 27.75%, they should. Here's why. When this retiree is finally on Social Security, you can see they have some small space to fill in income within that marginal bracket of 27.75% before they see the worst part of the Social Security tax torpedo. After that, they do drop back down to only being taxed at 25% before IRMA starts later on. Well, even if they fully fill up the first IRMA zone, their marginal tax rate throughout this zone, throughout filling up that zone, would be 30.7% due to the tax spikes that we can see on the screen. And so this retiree needs to get to work quickly on their Roth conversion strategy. We can see that converting aggressively and converting 100% of their IRA assets makes a lot of sense. As an aside, I've been seeing a number of cases lately where a retiree purchased an income annuity from an advisor, and that advisor sold that income annuity without considering taxes to any degree. For instance, a recent situation had a client buying an annuity that put them smack dab in the worst part of the Social Security tax torpedo. Now, guaranteed income can be great for some retirees, but this advisor just cost this client greatly because they cared more about the annuity than they did about the tax implications. Instead, with a bit of patience and a more strategic approach, this retiree would have been better off flooring their income from a traditional IRA and then layering on additional Roth annuity income thereafter. Scenario number 2 is yet again a somewhat common situation. Those with big taxable accounts are going to find that converting down to 0 or close to 0 often gives them the most tax efficient solution. Here's why. A big reason we want to convert from your IRAs in the first place is because of forced income in the form of required minimum distributions. You are forced to take money out of those IRAs that you don't want or often don't even need. Well, there's also forced income coming from a taxable account in a slightly different form. Dividends and interest are forced income on an annual basis. This can easily be $15,000 to $50,000 and growing on a $1 million taxable account. Further capital gain distributions from mutual funds can also be a culprit for forced income. Now, it's important to understand that IRA distributions and long-term capital gains are taxed at 2 different rates. Ordinary income is taxed more aggressively than capital gains. And so one would think that the forced income from a taxable account is more preferred. And that may be true in some cases. For instance, a married couple can show over $100,000 in capital gains, and if that's the only income they have, they will see it all within the 0% capital gains bracket. But here is the underlying issue. Capital gains stack on top of ordinary income in a given year. So a combination of RMDs and dividends and capital gains can spell a costly tax bill. This is a snapshot from a client's forward-looking tax plan. We are looking at what they would expect in 2035 if this client did no Roth conversions. As you can see, they have a sizable RMD in pink that is pushing them from what would be the 15% bracket all the way up into the 28% bracket. Further, the long-term capital gains they would have would be taxed at 0 and 15%, but instead is being pushed up and being fully taxed at 18.8%. They are seeing two different levels of increased taxes, and unfortunately we'll only see this problem grow over time. Here's why. What do most people do with an excess RMD if they aren't charitably minded? They pay taxes on it, invest it in their taxable account, and that taxable account continues to grow, generating more forced income in the form of dividends and capital gains. Because of the large RMD, all of that forced income is taxed at higher rates. Next year, the problem starts all over, slightly more costly than the previous year. The longer this person lives, the more of a tax headache they will have. Further, when one spouse passes away, the widow trap amplifies this problem for the surviving spouse as they go from the married filing jointly brackets down to the single filer brackets. So if we take a look at a situation where a 65-year-old couple has some substantial assets, both with IRAs and taxable accounts, we see their optimal strategy is to convert quite aggressively at 32% and do so until their IRAs are completely exhausted. This would translate to over $1.5 million in after-tax benefit for this couple's retirement. But even if we cut this person's situation in half and use $1 million in IRAs and $1 million of taxable accounts, we will see that converting down to zero still offers greater tax savings than converting down to a more manageable IRA balance like $500,000. And so this is where prudent and personalized tax planning is so important. Notice the slope of the tax benefits as well as the ending benefit is greater with the convert to zero situation relative to the convert down to a more manageable balance. Finally, we have a less common situation, but nonetheless important situation for those it applies to. If you're someone who is at risk of having estate tax problems, you will want to consider converting all of your IRAs prior to the end of your life. Now, right now, the estate exemption is quite far away for many, totaling almost $26 million for a married couple. However, this is set to essentially cut in half in 2026 as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Now, $13 million is still a lot, but will affect more than 5 times as many families by some estimations. And as you can see by the table on the left, estate taxes quickly escalate quite rapidly, topping out at 40% at $1 million over the estate exemption. Also note that some states charge estate tax as well at much lower levels, and so the same idea applies there as well. Well, let me take a little bit of a tangent and ask a seemingly unrelated question. If I offered you $100,000 in a traditional IRA or $95,000 in a Roth IRA, which would you choose? Despite being $5,000 less, almost everyone would choose the Roth IRA. Now, why is this? The Roth IRA is after-tax dollars, where the IRA is pre-tax. It's unlikely that you can withdraw the $100,000 in the IRA at a tax cost less than $5,000, so the Roth is the obvious choice here. Now, take this logic and apply it to the estate exemption we're about to talk through. Estate tax looks at your gross estate. It values IRA assets dollar for dollar, as well as Roth assets dollar for dollar. Here's a projection for a married couple with $6 million in assets right now. This is shown in inflation-adjusted dollars. If they did no Roth conversions, they would be looking at crossing the estate exemption in 2042. Notice they have a $4 million IRA at this point in time, but this $4 million IRA isn't really worth $4 million because taxes have to come out to get to the after-tax value. But the IRS would view a $4 million IRA and a $4 million Roth the same way. So if they passed away in 2042, they would owe an estate tax bill projected at $300,000. They're going to have to pay this tax bill and then also pass that $4 million in IRAs on to the next generation and they will have to take that money out over 10 years. So there's essentially 2 layers of costs that they're going to have to factor in here. What if instead they converted all of their IRA assets earlier than this? They eliminate the pre-tax value and are now only seeing their estate tax charge on after-tax values, which is how estate tax should work anyway. If you took this overly simplistically and converted in a non-prudent way, and they did that $4 million conversion all in 1 year, well, they would end up with less than $3 million in after-tax benefits. In this situation in 2042, they would no longer be hitting that estate exemption or be over that point, and they would see tax savings because of this. And so this is an exact reason why rule of thumbs cannot rule our retirement. The rule of thumb would be only doing partial conversions and leaving an IRA balance as you get into those RMD years to fill up those lower brackets. But as we can see here, there are many cases where a retiree will find it best to convert 100% of their assets. Now, if you like this video and want to dive deeper into Roth conversion analysis, I think you're going to get a lot out of learning about the 5 common Roth conversion mistakes we continually see. Click here to learn more, and always remember, you don't need more money, you need a better plan. Thanks for watching.